As some of you probably already know, I'm not even the biggest James Bond fan. But at the same time, I understand and respect the significance of this character as it pertains to the history and even the future of cinema. James Bond has a very loyal fan base, and up until recently, the franchise has mostly been protected from becoming corporate slop like most established IPs coming out of Hollywood these days. Well, all of this is about to change, and when I tell you about what could have been, it might sting even a little bit more. Let's discuss.
I watch so you don't have to.
All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
So Barbara Broccoli has long been considered the gatekeeper of the James Bond franchise. Everything runs through her. Truthfully, I kind of wish that more iconic franchises had gatekeepers just like this. Just someone, anyone, to step up and preserve the integrity of these characters and these stories. Someone who can stop some out-of-touch Hollywood studio from ruining something that is beloved by millions. And Barbara Broccoli and her family were those type of people for years when it comes to the James Bond franchise. We need to remember that this was the woman who once balked at the idea of a female James Bond proclaiming that the character is inherently male more so than anything else.
Damn right, that's the only way I work, Cap.
I always felt like she understood what was best for James Bond and to a degree, what the fans wanted. There was news actually just this December that James Bond producers actually shot down a female 007 idea that was pitched to them by Amazon of all places. Now what we need to understand about this is Amazon purchased MGM in 2022, which is the home of James Bond. But Barbara Broccoli still had final say on the direction of the franchise. And time after time, she has seemingly shot down ridiculous pitch after ridiculous pitch, at least until recently. So apparently, after years of back and forth and negotiating, Amazon will soon have a full grip on the franchise that has spawned 25 films, but whose TV, licensing, spin-off, and interconnected cinematic universe potential remains untapped. And that, my friends, right there is the problem with this entire situation. By giving Amazon free rein to do what they please now, they basically have every intention of turning this franchise into something that it never was. Amazon will no doubt water down James Bond, bend and twist it to its will, and ultimately milk it dry. And they will clearly do so by oversaturating the market with more James Bond content. And the overabundance of content will most likely do more harm than good when it comes to the legacy of this character. That's just what we need. James Bond TV series. A James Bond cinematic universe. Tell me, how often has it worked for legacy franchises recently when a studio tries to do too much with the property? Say what you will about the quality of James Bond films from movie to movie, but more often than not, they felt special. It felt like an event every time a James Bond film was released. And that was all because we didn't get these films regularly. They weren't on a release schedule. James Bond films came out when someone came along with a great idea that was worthy of a new movie. And I do believe that we are going to lose all of that now with Amazon in full control. Former Amazon chief Roy Price had this to say about the situation. The Broccoli's have provided the best example in Hollywood history of managing a character. But in today's complex landscape, it makes sense for Amazon to get in the driver's seat and control their own destiny. I beg to differ. I would love for anyone to show me one example of a studio having full and complete control over an IP being a good thing. Star Wars, Marvel, and DC are all in the gutter right now thanks to incompetent studios who treated these franchises like cash cows rather than something that is to be respected.
Big mistake.
I would argue again that one or two people acting as gatekeepers to these franchises would have done a lot of good. But I guess at this point, corporate has to corporate, and they are running out of things to exploit. So James Bond, you are on the chopping block. It was nice having you exist untainted while it lasted. This franchise will no longer be about limiting exposure in the future. It will now be about maximizing that exposure. And in my opinion, in today's cinematic landscape, that is rarely a good thing. Now that's not to say that Barbara Broccoli and company haven't made some mistakes. Outside of signing full control of this franchise over to Amazon, she also apparently blocked one of the best living filmmakers we have from directing a James Bond movie.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
Avid Bond fan and cinematic genius Christopher Nolan expressed interest in directing a Bond movie for years, specifically right after he directed Tenet. But in typical Nolan fashion, he wanted free rein to be the storyteller that he is. But Barbara Broccoli made it clear that no director would have final cut while James Bond was under her control. And of course, Nolan went on to direct Oppenheimer instead, and the rest is history. But to me, this was quite the what-if scenario. This is a massive missed opportunity that could have potentially elevated the Bond franchises to places that it's never been before. Steven Spielberg apparently wanted to direct a Bond film once upon a time, but he was blocked by the Broccoli family as well.
Son of a bitch.
So this creates an interesting scenario where me as an outsider has to ask the question, where is Bond in the best hands? I'm not sold on Amazon, obviously, given their recent track record with franchises like The Lord of the Rings. Now, is it possible that now that Amazon has full control, they will want to make a big splash with the first movie that they produce? Is it possible that they could reach back out to someone like Christopher Nolan to make a massive impact? I think if they're smart, that's exactly what they would do. But actually thinking logically about it, it would probably never happen. For one, Nolan would still want full control of his movie, and considering Amazon just regained control, they are unlikely to relinquish it. And two, Nolan is the type of guy who wants to release his movies in theaters. And we already seen what happens when a company asks him to release his work on streaming. Nolan basically walks out the door, doesn't look back, and subsequently makes that studio look foolish.
I understood that reference.
In my opinion, Barbara Broccoli was out of her mind to not hand over the reins to someone like Christopher Nolan. She is even more out of her mind to turn around and then hand those reins to Amazon of all places. To me, James Bond deserves much better than this. And it's kind of ironic that the same person who successfully protected this character for so many years could potentially now be responsible for its downfall, and you just hate to see it.
Y'all be cool. Right on.